Hello. Nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see you as well. Thank you so much for being here. Austin Kaplan, it is such a pleasure. I cannot wait to talk to you about your law practice, everything that you are doing. And I want you to introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Austin Kaplan. I'm the founder and managing attorney at Kaplan Law Firm, PLLC. We are an employment law and civil rights law boutique law firm here in Texas, and we represent almost entirely individual people. So we're probably best known for our early work in 2015 when we successfully brought a lawsuit against the Texas County clerk who refused to issue same-sex marriage licenses to couples who were seeking to get married following the Supreme Court's decision which allowed gay marriage across the United States. Over my career, I've done a bunch of stuff. In 2016, I was named the Austin Under 40 Austinite of the Year. In 2017, I became chairperson of the City of Austin's Ethics Commission. I've also served after that as the president of the Austin Young Lawyers Association. I was chair of the Austin Bar Association's Pro Bono Committee, and I've done a bunch of other kind of things. Super Lawyer Rising Star, Austin Monthly Top Lawyer, Super Lawyer Top 100, serve as every kind of fellow that's out there, I think. Texas Bar Foundation, Austin Bar Foundation, Texas Bar College, etc. Recently actually became board certified in labor and employment law, but just now finally I've been invited to speak here on the Cool Careers podcast. So I'm thrilled to be here and kind of talk about careers.
Well, we are honored to have you. It is, I mean, obviously you're a little lazy, so
got to get to work.
All those credentials that you have. So thanks again for being here with us. We came connected through my cousin Taria, who's an attorney in a different area, but she connected us here. And I always like to start off with connections because I find them to be very influential and very helpful in one's career. Can you give us an idea of what that means for you and what connections and relationships have been beneficial for you in your career, Austin?
That's a great question. And for me, it's loaded. So I have to admit, I'm not a native Texan. I know. Stop the presses. I actually went to law school in Chicago, or in Illinois rather, and started my practice in Chicago. And for lawyers, law is still pretty geographically specific as a career. Mm-hmm. Each state bar is basically a monopoly, and they operate independently. So you have to kind of get admitted to each state before you can move there. You can't just up and move like in most careers and just relocate. You have to get permission before you do it. And it's extremely hard to do when you're young in your career. In fact, for me, when I relocated to Texas, I had to take the Texas bar. I had to take a second bar to get admitted to Texas, the Texas bar. So what happened was I was in love, and so I was dating my now wife, and she was looking at grad schools. And the oldest reason the book to come down to Austin, Texas, she got into UT, and so we spent a year kind of where I was in Chicago still, where we were living, and she was in Austin at UT, and then I finally moved down and followed her here, and we've been here ever since. So it's been over a decade now. But yeah, so I my whole network. All the people I knew from law school, all the people I knew before law school were all in Illinois. I didn't know a soul in Texas. And so when I was trying to come down here, I realized the importance of that, right? The fact that I didn't have connections. I kind of had to start from scratch. So the very first thing I did was just start that process, pounding the pavement. And I got some great advice, and I'll share it with everybody who's listening to this. Mm-hmm. It probably works outside of law, but it was super helpful in law, especially in a tight market or in a tight space like Austin, mm-hmm. which is always a tight space to find a law job. And the advice was do a coffee, or now a Zoom coffee, right, or a cocktail or whatever, with whoever will meet with you. And then as you talk to that person and tell them about your hopes and your dreams, and your interests and your career and your skills, capabilities, etc., and you get them thinking about, where you might be a fit or what they know, what they might do with you, right? Ask them for 3 names and to connect you to those 3 people. And then for those 3 people, ask for 3. And then for every one of those, you just continue until eventually you'll find where you need to be. And that's exactly what I did. I followed that great advice, and it eventually worked out. It took a lot of coffee, took a lot of pavement pounding and job searching, but I did. I bounced around a lot of jobs. for a lawyer for sure when I first came to Austin, before kind of entering the track where I am now. That kind of led me to today. So, and you know, like I said in the intro, I won the Austin Out of the Year award. So I went from knowing nobody to kind of winning, you know, one of the nicest awards for young professionals in Austin that you can get. So it's been quite a journey, for sure.
Well, that's an amazing story. I really love it, and I really like that building of a strategy, that building your network strategy, asking for 3, getting 3. It's almost like a pyramid scheme, but but almost
yes.
But it's also about building network, because that's what network you know, marketing is all about. But it's internal, your own brand marketing. So I really think that's great advice.
The other neat thing is it takes the stress off the person you're asking, because you're not like, give me a job. You're like, give me 3 other people that will hire me first. And then you kind of make the person think like, wait, should I be hiring you first before these other people snap you up? Like, hold on, this might be somebody that I could put to use. So if you're talking to people in your career sort of silo, that's a helpful thing to do. So I actually give this advice to clients sometimes that are sort of like hit a pivot point, let's say, or maybe a brick wall in their careers. Say, hey, this worked for me. Go ahead and try it out. And you know, it won't work for everybody, right? But you know, certainly help me break through in a space that's really hard. Austin as a legal market is a really interesting space. We have here in Austin, the University of Texas School of Law, which is one of the top law schools in the whole country. And it graduates something like 400 new graduates a year. And in my estimation, 399 of them want to stay and practice in Austin and never leave because they love it. They haven't been here. Fun city, great, laid back. But they can't. So there's just not enough positions in this town, or at least there never were. It's a smaller town. And so they get flown to the winds. They go to New York and California and Houston and Dallas, El Paso, San Antonio, et cetera. And then the dream is always to try to come back. So there's always this, like, there's always more interest than there is availability in Austin job market. And that creates, it's a challenge to try to find a job here in the first place. So the networking in that scenario becomes even more important. I think I tried from Chicago tossing resumes at Austin firms from remote, and I got nothing back. You know, it was just, you know, and I thought at the time I was in a big fancy firm. I was in the Sears Tower on the 77th floor at the time.
Swanky.
You know, so swanky, right? I had a decent degree for the Midwest, and I thought surely I'll just land a job in Austin and I'll just slide over. Oh no, you know, no. And I think that's still true today. I think it's just a challenging market to break into because of the supply-demand issue that's just always present here in this market. So, but it's good advice for any market, right? Because you sort of let your network do the work for you. So
it's very universal, and I really like it. I think I'm going to use it, so I appreciate that you sharing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to advise other people to do that. That is how recruiters work. Recruiters work together with each other on our own networks, on individuals that we're trying to place and help, and also with our careers. It's just the way it goes. So it's kind of a natural space for us, but for individuals that are in, you know, other spaces like, you know, law, that sort of thing. And also if you're in a space where, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of time speaking with people and talking to people. Well, recruiters are always talking to someone all the time. So it kind of seems like a natural thing. And it's an easy process for us. But, you know, when you talk to individuals, you find that speaking to people becomes, you know, a bit of there's a shyability, there's, you know, factors of being rejected, and people kind of shy away from it. So that's really a good one. And I did know about the whole law school in different states because Taria went to law school out of state as well. And that was one of the conversations, like, which ones?
Was it Louisiana? Is that right?
No, she went to LSU, but then she went to a school, I should know.
Oh, it's undergrad LSU, that's right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about, yes, that's right.
She went to a school, I know it's in Lansing. So she went to a law school in Michigan, actually.
Yeah, Michigan, yeah. See, and another thing is that the geography is important. I think if I had gone to a law school in Louisiana, it would be almost easier because people have heard of Louisiana here, whereas like the cornfield in Illinois doesn't really register in Texas. So
I love it.
Yeah, but it turned out all good. Some shoe leather and, you know, and just perseverance really, you know, it worked. So yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah. 10 years, you're honorary Texan now, so it's all good.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
I like to say, like, well, I'm not a native Texan, but kids are now born here, and I came here for the oldest reason in the book in Austin, which is
that's right.
to
For
follow
love.
someone going to grad school. Yeah, school.
That's right. That's right. Cupid sent you here, so we accept you.
Thank you.
Now, was law school always the plan? Was this the, the origination from the beginning? Like, tell us a little bit about your early aspirations in undergrad.
Yeah, I don't know. My parents, my dad was like a small business person, and my mom was a public school teacher. So, it wasn't like a family of lawyers or anything like that. I just kind of always sort of wanted to advocate for the underdog, and kind of had a strong sense of justice. And I always thought like law would be a cool career. Not so much that I'm like argumentative as a person, but just like would be like an interesting way to like, I don't know, do something that's like new every day and different every day. Yeah. Some days I regret that decision, but because it never ends. We're always dealing with new stuff. But yeah, I always thought it would be kind of interesting. I always kind of had an interest in sort of governance and law and policy in these spaces, and being a lawyer is a great way to do that. I was always kind of interested in social justice as well, and I always wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. I guess I just didn't know what that meant, right? What is a civil rights lawyer? How do you do that? What is it? And I'm probably still trying to figure that out today, even though I am one of the few, in fact. But yeah, I mean, it's been like a process and a journey to get there. So I think I got some good advice in undergrad. I sort of did almost like a law and society sort of government undergrad. And the good advice I got was like, go do something else. Don't go straight to law school. Go do some other stuff. So I was an IT project manager, actually, for a law firm, though, but still different discipline, right? Wasn't doing any lawyering.
Right.
And you and I love to travel. So that was a cool job because the law firm was an international law firm with 13 offices at the time. And they needed IT people to literally go there. It was just a long time ago already, but you had to fly to places to do the IT stuff. So they flew me to Texas for the very first time in my life. I went to Dallas. First time in Austin was part of that trip. Hong Kong, London, Brussels, other places. Wow. So yeah, I was in my 20s. This was very, very cool. Yeah. So it was not law, right? Law adjacent.
Yes.
And but a great set of skills and just a great experience. And then after that, I came back, did that for a little while, and decided to take a little break, do some backpacking, and then eventually go to law school. So that was kind of the trajectory. So I didn't go straight through. I took a couple of years off, and then came back and went to law school. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then from law school, I didn't immediately, I wasn't immediately a civil rights lawyer. I wanted to be, but it was actually really I wanted to be kind of a nonprofit civil rights lawyer and maybe work for the ACLU or one of the better known organizations. At the time, it was impossible to get those jobs. So I desperately tried and could not get in. Yeah, they were hard to get. They didn't have very many openings, and they were real competitive. And so I struck out on a lot of nonprofit jobs, and ended up with ironically a fancy Sears Tower job. But
bummer.
Go figure. Help pay the bills, and I was a litigator, so I always knew I wanted to do litigation, do courtroom stuff, do more of the dramatic side of the lawyering. I felt like that would be more fun, more interesting, and better use of my skills.
Yes.
And so
very
yeah, like Suits, I want to do this. But at that law firm, what I came to realize, and what other lawyers who have been doing this for a while will tell you, is that unfortunately a lot of the big time litigation is just reviewing documents and head down work, right? It's a lot of sort of drudgery, and that's just the nature of how it goes. And frankly, the people that get to do the fun stuff have put in 20, 30 years of drudgery before they're allowed to do it, And so it's like, oh golly gee, how do I get into court to do some stuff? How can I get into the action here? And I sort of fell in with the what was left of the labor and employment group at that firm. And so I ended up working on trade secret and non-compete cases. Those are kind of small comparatively. They're quick hits. They happen in usually within 60, 90 days, they show up and they're over. You got a lot of court appearances, you have motions, you have argument, you have drafting, you have exhibits, you have witnesses, you have all this crazy stuff. And I was like, oh, this is great. I found my thing. I'm going to do that. So that was my entree into kind of what I ended up doing, was the trade secret non-compete world. And then I sort of like turned that into the employment law side of things. And then the employment law side of things, it turns out, really is civil rights work. So what you're doing when you're representing employees in anti-discrimination work is it's core civil rights work. It's Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that applies. So so that's now my day-to-day is civil rights, either in employment or, for LGBT couples, for people that have been, abused by the police, right? Excessive force by the police, something like that. But it's all within the umbrella of civil rights, and we're always essentially always representing the individuals, the people that are affected. So it's a really rewarding place to be.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. I get thanked a lot, or I get like paid a lot in thank yous and hugs, at least when we could meet with people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's great. That is really, really great to work with people. It's funny, recruiting and what I do are sort of like, they're very pretty well connected. So it's kind of neat.
So before we move on, you talked about trade secrets. Is that more of a corporate thing? You're talking about like NDAs or non-competes type of trade secrets, or I made this recipe and I don't want you to share it when you go to this other company type of thing?
That's a great question. Trade secret and non-compete cases are probably the tightest crossover between what I do and what recruiters do all day long, right? Because you want to know, when you have a salesperson, do they have a non-compete and a non-solicit, and what does it say, and can they get hired by this next employer, right? So I'm the lawyer involved with that for a ton of folks out here in Central Texas, and I generally represent the individuals. So usually another lawyer will represent the company that's enforcing the non-compete. But what I do is I will, and sometimes I'll even get referrals actually from recruiters here. I will consult with individuals and talk to them about their rights, the enforceability of the non-compete and the non-solicit clause, what they can and can't do, what they should and shouldn't do to get themselves out of trouble, or potentially stop getting themselves in trouble, right? Response to cease and desist letters, all that sort of stuff, and even litigation. So most recently, I represented a CEO of who had departed his former employer and went to the next employer, and there was litigation. So I represented the CEO individually, and then the next employer had their own corporate counsel, and the prior employer had their own corporate counsel, but I represent the individual. So I love that. I like to fight for people and their right to be able to do what they want to do, within the law. So
I love it.
Yeah, there's a lot of non-compete action in Texas, unfortunately. Oklahoma, not allowed, right? California, not allowed, but Texas, it comes up. So, yeah.
So do you find yourself having to know about neighboring state laws, even though you're not licensed there?
Yeah, it's a bit of a patchwork, because oftentimes the non-compete agreements will specify which law applies, and that sort of gets the presumption of being accurate. There's a more detailed analysis. Have you been through this?
Well, a little bit. I mean, you hear a lot from a recruitment, from the HR side. You hear, lots of, stories that may or may not happen, rumors in the company. And so, so non-competes, they can get really dicey. I used to be in staffing. And so when you work in staffing agencies, that's a different type of law. I'm sure you know this, but it's a different type of staffing law is a different type of law versus employment law. Staffing have their own set of rules. And then when you look from the HR side, there's, your standard rules that usually the law kind of is working toward those HR laws. And so they're usually married together. So I'm sure you know the difference between the two. But typically, if you hear about NDAs or people going from staffing or to corporate, it's like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because that doesn't really apply to us. And so you kind of know, things that, or you hear things that are
right.
So
what I would tell folks is that if you're in Texas, don't assume that the non-compete or the non-solicitation or the no rate of employee clause or whatever it is you have is not enforceable. That's a tough lesson to learn. Assume you should talk to a lawyer to know your rights. And this is one of the cool things that we've been able to do at my firm, is just to offer people to be able to like book an appointment real quick, get on the phone with a lawyer, pay some money, right? But know where they're at. We'll review the agreement. We'll give people advice. We'll tell them what they should and shouldn't do. And that little ounce of prevention is worth its weight in gold, because if you end up getting in trouble, and just acting because you assume or you read something on the internet from California that says non-competes aren't enforceable, you could find yourself in a lot of hot water in Texas. You could lose your next job, you can get sued, you could be out lots of money. So, so we help people. My favorite place to be on this is the prevention side. You know, ideally, when should people call up before they leave, actually, and switch jobs, right? When they call the recruiter and they're like, all right, I want out of here and I want to go to a next sales job or the next engineering job, software engineering job or whatever, and there's a non-compete and they know it, call me now, right? So that we can make a plan to avoid any problems and talk about it. But yeah,
that's all good. That's all good to know. This is, I've worked in HR or in recruitment for 20 years, and this is the company that I'm with right now. It's a consulting firm, and this is my first time signing a non-compete.
Recruiters get locked up too. I know.
Yeah. This
Lawyers
is my first time. Yeah,
lawyers are not supposed to. Well, I say can't, but you know, anybody could give you a non-compete and make you sign it, and then the question is whether or not it's worth the paper it's written on, right? But yeah, recruiters can. They can enforce it. There are a couple of cases out there, in fact, about recruiters that are pretty notorious. Yikes! Yeah, I know. Watch out, recruiters.
I've heard the stories. Typically for our NDAs, I work in environmental, so it's usually scientists or, you know, it's patents and for people who create, work or, machinery, technology, anything with the company. So it's like, hey, don't take what you found or created here somewhere else. So it's typically for individuals, but yeah, I mean. I had Taria look over my NDA before I signed it. Good idea.
See, everyone listening who hasn't had that happen is like, I better do that. And here's a secret. If you're a good candidate, so here's another recruiter insight. If you're a good candidate, you may be able to negotiate a slightly more narrow term on your non-compete or non-solicit. The time to do it is before you sign the offer letter, right? Now, I don't want to step on the toes of recruiters too much here because we don't want to mess with the compensation to get that term, but we may want to negotiate. If we got a real strong candidate and they want you, you can play with those terms. So sometimes with executives and with other people, I can do those negotiations too. That is really neat because then it's like, well, the concern is, what if things don't work out? I go to this really new, exciting startup or whatever, and what if things don't work out? What are my options? And the answer is, we want you to have as many options as possible, right? We don't want to limit your career based on a 2-year non-compete that you're signing and you don't know what you're getting yourself into with this new company. So my very first non-compete case, the one I was thinking of, had to do with like the sales side, but plastic engineering for organic goods. Right, kind of in your space there, environmental related engineering. So yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, this is
small world
information. I'm gonna tell all my recruiters, hey, you need to watch this part. If you haven't watched any of them, you got to hear about this part. Definitely something for you to learn. Now, before we move on to unemployment, what made you start your own firm? Was it the job market in Austin that made you say, hey, let's just create your own space?
My trajectory was, I went from the world's biggest law firm, currently by lawyer headcount, to starting my own single person, so the smallest possible law firm, one, right? So I kind of kept getting smaller and smaller each step of the way. So I started at this real big firm in Chicago, and then when I came to Austin, I sort of scrambled and ended up at a mid-sized firm doing something a little bit different, and then I ended up in employment at a kind of maybe a little bit bigger firm. Then I sort of switched to the plaintiff side and ended up at a yet smaller firm, like a 5-person firm. And then my boss at the 5-person firm was actually trying to shrink his firm and decided he wanted to do a little bit less, which is to his credit. And so it was time for me to make a move. And I was like, well, I wonder what I should do. And I had my wife and a couple of friends who were like, you should just start your own firm. And I was like, I can't do that. And anyway, they were in my ear enough and gave me enough kicks in the butt. And I remember, like, for anybody thinking about doing this, here's my story. I was like, should I do it? I don't know. I filed the paperwork at night at the bar, 11 p.m. with a friend. And then the next morning, I had been doing some like consultations on the side, just meeting with people about non-competes and other things. And the next morning, it was Thursday. I say morning, it was noon. I got up at noon. I was unemployed at the time, and I'm in my PJs and I'm totally unshaven and I love it. And the call comes in, Austin, you remember we met with us a couple of days ago or whatever it was. Well, you're not going to believe it. We just got sued on this non-compete. We need you to run to court. The hearing's at 3. They filed the suit at noon and they set a hearing for 3.
Wow.
This is like the rarest of occasions, right? This almost never happens, but lo and behold. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. I now have a law firm and it's something to do. So I'm going to go do it. So I shaved really quickly, put on a suit, tried to figure out what to do, ran down to court. And that was it. And it hasn't stopped since. I think it's fair to say, I don't think I've had a break ever since then. It kind of like, it started with me on the treadmill and it hasn't really changed at all in 5 years. We're now a team of 6 and we may be adding some more people in as well. So we're still growing, slowly but surely. And there's just so much to do in employment on the employee side here in Texas and civil rights. There's an unlimited amount of work to do. Mm-hmm. It's just a question of managing it and making it successful. So
I know you're so busy right now. Like, unemployment is definitely a conversation everyone's talking about now. I don't think we've talked about it as much ever in my career. And because I'm a recruiter, people tend to, ask questions, to me as an HR professional. And do you know this? Do you know this? And it's like, I hate to, give you any of the wrong information. So I've been kind of collecting a list just to kind of ask you, just to make sure that we kind of clear the air and make sure that I'm kind of telling people the right thing. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna fire off of just a few things. It's not a quiz, I promise.
Fire away.
First of all,
see if I can get some of this right.
First of all, does everyone qualify for unemployment right now, or is there any prereqs of not qualifying at this particular time because of the pandemic?
That's a great question. Most people qualify, but not all. So if you're undocumented, so you don't have work authorization in the country, can't get unemployment. And other than that, the standard generally for unemployment to get sort of bounced from TWC, there's basically 2 main reasons you might not qualify, and those are both still in place. Mm-hmm. Number 1 is if you resign without good cause. So you just say, I quit, see you later. Generally, you can't get unemployment in that circumstance. And then the second is if you are fired for misconduct connected with the work. And then TWC has like a detailed sub list of what qualifies as misconduct. That is kind of a little loose. But in any event, if you get fired for like some good reason, let's say, some misconduct related reason, not really performance, but misconduct, then you may not qualify either. So, but it's much broader than it used to be. COVID related reason is a reason, right? Is a good cause to resign. If you need to resign to take care of your kids and there's no childcare and there's no school, that's a good reason. If, I don't know, there's a broader universe of possibilities now. Mm-hmm.
So I know you said if you're undocumented, does that mean like DACA recipients as well?
No, so DACA recipients should be able to receive unemployment as long as they have work authorization. That's my understanding. Yeah, I haven't actually advised on that before. That's an interesting question.
Okay. And I know furlough is a big topic. So furlough and, sometimes mean different things to different companies. But from an unemployment standpoint, are there any various differences between furlough and being laid off? Is the unemployment the same process?
In March, I think the word furlough sort of like appeared in Texas for the first time. Like I honestly, I scoured the TWC website to be like, have they even thought about this before? And I think the answer is not too much.
You have a policy on this?
Not too much. No. It's all over the place because I think that the furlough concept, which wasn't all that. I mean, shoot, in Austin, we were probably at effective like 2% unemployment. Nobody was getting furloughed at all. Like people were getting hired.
Correct.
So now, right? So now it's like, there are a couple of different like understandings of what the furlough really is, and employers are doing it differently. Some are furloughing without any pay or benefits. Some are furloughing with like just benefits. Some are covering benefits. The furlough, as long as you lose a certain amount of pay, you qualify for TWC unemployment benefits. And that was important up until now because you got between 60 and 569, I think it is, and $512 a month in state benefits. And then you also got $600 flat fee on top of that per week.
Right.
So it turned out to a lot of money. And if you had a family of 2, I mean, you could be doing just fine, right, on unemployment for the first time ever. but that $600 payment is now gone. And I'm not sure, it just depends on what the people in Washington do as to whether or not it ever gets reinstated in any capacity.
Yeah.
And so now the maximum benefit that you can get in Texas is $512 a week. That's hard. I mean, $512 a week doesn't go very far in a state as expensive as this. And so, you know, so now it's a challenge. The period of time that you can get benefits was extended to a year by the CARES Act. And so you have a longer runway of benefits, but it may not be enough. And so yeah, it's going to put a squeeze on families for sure. We're just now, this is like the first week when the benefits got cut off. So we're just now trying to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I know that was everyone was hoping that they wouldn't leave and go on hiatus before they decided what they're going to do, if they were going to continue the $600 or the CARES Act. I know there was a bit of a misunderstanding. I'm not sure if this is kind of your area because this is more like a tax question. But is the $600? Do you know if the $600 is going to be taxed once you claim your unemployment when you file your taxes next year? Do you know how?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not a tax lawyer, so I don't usually give tax advice. My general understanding is that $600 weekly unemployment supplement that the federal government provided is taxable income. So there is a tax burden on that money. It's not just pure cash. And I think that when people apply to TWC for unemployment, there were kind of two little boxes there. And one said, do you want to have taxes taken out now? And 0.0% of people checked that. And then, because if you need the money, right? I mean,
That's right. But, right. So you wouldn't want to pay it later. You want to defer.
Most people are going to defer, right? So everyone checked that second box and then forgot that they saw the box, of course. And then there's going to be a scary tax bill perhaps next year. But I think, for most people, yeah, I mean, it's early days, right? We don't know what more government intervention is coming, whether these things might change, or there might be some program to help people out with that, some of the other assistance. But yeah, it's just something else to be scared about at night, right? If you've been on these unemployment benefits, that you might owe some portion of it back in taxes later. Bummer.
In pre-pandemic days, was unemployment available more than a year?
No, I think it was, golly.
Is that always
weeks?
been yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it was 26 weeks in Texas, and they extended to 52.
Okay.
There was another extension back at the last crash, so that's a little bit kind of confusing. But the federal government had done something similar in the last crisis when they extended the unemployment benefits, just the time period in which the unemployment benefits were available. But then that went away, and then I think it was 26 weeks. Now it's 52 again. Yeah.
In what you're doing right now, do you find that there are specific a host of industries that are doing most of the layoff, or do you see it kind of all over the place?
Yeah, we're getting calls from certainly targeted industries. Hospitality is a bloodbath, obviously. Restaurants, hotels. Yeah. I feel really bad. I mean, in Austin, that's a huge driver of the economy. Everybody got screwed, and it's just really bad. So that's a bummer. We're trying to do what we can to help people, where we can there. Other tangentially related industries have been hurt too. So just without giving away, too much information, like ticketing for events or logistics for events companies, stuff like that, where it might be even software, but it's software for this industry. Those people are hurting too. And that's hurting people in Austin. Obviously, for the rest of the state, the oil field is a related complete disaster that's been really, really challenging. And so we're getting those calls even in Austin from oil field employees who need help and have questions and all that kind of stuff. We get a lot of calls from healthcare providers. What happened out there? Yeah, you wouldn't expect it, right? But what happened out there was a lot of healthcare providers, smaller providers, got really hurt because they couldn't see patients for at least a quarter, and hospital systems as well had to cut back. And so we're seeing weird stuff going on. It's not like a consistent, it's not like the oil field or restaurants, but it's a problematic area, interestingly. And the other thing about healthcare providers that we got a lot of, and teachers who we don't do a ton of that work, but they're frontline workers, and they want to know what their rights are with respect to safety and PPE, and it's complicated. Yeah, right. I mean, it's a complicated legal analysis as well. You're dealing with a number of different sort of what we call sometimes whack-a-mole statutes, right? It's like you get the facts and then you try to figure out which hole they fit into that where there might be protection. So the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, has some sort of extensions to the FMLA for people that have to take leave for a COVID-related reason and they can't be discriminated against or fired for that.
Okay.
But again, it's like there's a complicated analysis that you have to do as to whether or not there's coverage and then whether or not they violated it. And then, of course, there's Americans with Disabilities Act, which may apply if you're being treated differently because you have a qualified disability, let's say diabetes. And you don't want to come back to work because of your diabetes and you need to telework or work from home and they're not providing that, even though it would be reasonable and would be cost effective for the company to do it. They don't want to do it. Can we force the company to give you an accommodation or do something else to keep you safe, right, during the pandemic? You know, these are the kind of difficult issues we've been grappling with for months here. And they're all new to us too, because the coronavirus is new. The whole thing is new. So we're like, we're just like putting out fires all day long, all over the state for people.
Uncharted territory. For
yes. And I've talked to my friends who represent employers and HR, and it's the same thing, right? We're all sort of on different sides of what we're doing, but we're all running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to figure out how to handle this. And meanwhile, you know, unemployment has been, you know, at a steady clip across the country, and certainly here in Texas, like, you know, record numbers of unemployed people. And then reemployment has caused these wild issues. Anyway, I know it's cumbersome. It's been insane. It's been really like unprecedented for us in terms of like what's going on out there. Our call volume is through the roof. We can't help nearly close to everybody that calls us. We try to do everything that we can for the people that do and that we can help. And then obviously at the same time we're doing this employment side stuff, we're also doing civil rights, which is a whole nother topic, right? And this is like having an employment and civil rights firm in 2020 is who could have imagined that this would be the world we live in 2020, but here it is, right? So we're just trying to do the best we can to keep up with the world.